Welcome back to the Making Hope Happen series. I'm Lori Mage, and today I've got a good one for you. After coaching for over a decade inside and outside of organizations and doing this work for myself for over 25 plus years, there's one tool that people often overlook that can help them solve almost any challenge that they face and take advantage of almost any opportunity that's presented to them. So what's that one tool? In today's video, I'm going to share with you what that one tool is, why most people tend to overlook it, including myself in times, and how we can start to increase our ability to use that tool today. So let's get started. All right, so what's that one tool that often gets overlooked? What do you think it is? It's you. It's you. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to, how old they are, how young they are, how experienced or inexperienced they are, how big or how small the challenge or the goal is that they're facing. When it comes down to it, they already know what to do. They may not be able to solve the entire challenge or reduce all the stress and uncertainty right now, but when they get still with themselves, and they go quiet and they listen within, they at the very least know what the next immediate step is. And that goes for me too. In almost all cases, I already know what to do. And my hunch is that whatever challenge it is you're facing right now, deep inside of you, you already know what to do. So what's the problem? If we already have the answer to the challenges that we're facing and the goals we're going after and what we should say yes to and what we should say no to, what's the problem? Why do we continue to lose our way in life? Why do we get turned upside down when things don't go as planned and changes are announced? Why do we delay our decisions? And simultaneously, by delaying our decisions, we delay that sense of power and freedom and happiness that comes from living a life from the inside out, from living from our truth. As far as I can tell, there are three major obstacles that keep us from using the you tool effectively. And that first obstacle is that we rarely, if ever, make the time to sit still and have a conversation with our inner voice. We're constantly looking outside of ourselves for the answers instead of looking within. Why don't we look within first? Well, that leads to the second problem or obstacle that we have using the you tool effectively. We don't trust ourselves. We hear a message. Sometimes it's loud and clear, and sometimes it's just like a quiet whisper or a gentle nudge that says, it's time to end that relationship, or it's time to end that partnership. It's time to start that business. It's time to move to a different state. Maybe it's time to say no to the in-laws for Christmas this year. But we don't trust it. So that's the second problem. Even if we make time and increase our ability to hear that wisdom, we don't trust it when we hear it. But here's the thing, and this is the thing that I have found to be the most frustrating about this dilemma that I find myself in and I often find my clients in, is that even if we dedicate time to connect to and listen to our internal wisdom, and we actually trust that wisdom, right? So we've listened to it, we're trusting it, there's one more thing, one more obstacle that stands between the life we're currently living and the life we want to live and we're meant to live. What's that one thing? Action. We don't honor the wisdom by taking action on that wisdom. And why don't we do that? Because doing what we know we need to do, or doing what we know we should do based on our divine guidance and internal wisdom, it often requires us to be courageous, to be vulnerable, to take risks, and to discipline ourselves to think differently, to speak differently, and to behave differently. We may need to end a marriage, for example, or a friendship. Maybe we need to change jobs, or maybe you need to say no to an amazing opportunity that makes perfect sense on paper, makes perfect sense on your resume, and to everybody in your world, it makes perfect sense to them too. But when you reflect and you listen to your internal guidance system, it says, no, this is not for you. Or maybe instead of saying no to something that makes perfect sense, maybe your internal wisdom is telling you to say yes to an opportunity that makes completely no sense. And oh, by the way, that idea you just had, that internal wisdom telling you to go do that thing, it scares the crap out of you, right? So not only does it not make sense, but it scares the crap out of you. But when you listen to that internal wisdom, you know what you should do here. And for me, this third obstacle, this is the most painful to endure because you know exactly what to do, or at the very least, you know your immediate next step. And yet, you can't get yourself to do it. So what the heck do we do about this? Unfortunately, there's not one easy solution that's going to work for every single person watching this video right now. But there are 3 things that I've been doing that have truly been helpful to me in overcoming these obstacles. It's my hope in sharing them with you today that you can find value in them too. All right, so the first thing, make time to intentionally connect to your internal wisdom every single day. Now, you can do this first thing in the morning with like a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. What's really important is that you don't have external stimulus coming in. You don't have like the being clouded by terrible news or social media or anything like that. Just you in your space, quiet, cup of coffee, maybe a tea. You could also do this at lunch. You can unplug, go somewhere in nature maybe, maybe in the evening. Whatever works best for you, just get some time on the calendar to connect with yourself without any outside stimulus. Some people I know meditate on a cushion, others journal. Some like to walk alone in nature without any technology. I've even known people who have made it a habit to check in with themselves when they are stopped at like a traffic light, and they'll just do a quick scan of their bodies and look for any type of wisdoms or insights that might be wanting to surface while they're in transition, while they're moving between meetings, moving between running errands, moving between, picking up kids and being at work. They'll use those traffic signals to connect with themselves. For me, I have a conversation with myself every single morning, right around 5 a.m. If it's the weekend, it might be a little bit later, but during the week, 5 a.m. And it's usually a journal entry where I literally am going back and forth in a dialogue with myself. I'm like, hey, what's on the agenda for today? If I've got a challenge going on, what should I do in this situation? I'll literally write it out, the question, and I'll go back and forth of like what I'm saying to my internal wisdom and what the internal wisdom says back to me. I also seem to gain a lot of insights on long drives, taking hikes, especially like 2 to 3 day hikes or even longer. And another huge one for me comes from working with my own coach. My coach helps me connect to that internal wisdom by asking me to consider questions, 1, I've never thought about, or 2, maybe I'm scared to ask myself, or maybe even say it out loud. It terrifies me, so I may not ask myself that question, but that's what I pay him to do, is he asks me those hard questions and things that I haven't considered for myself. So that's 1, make time to connect with your inner wisdom, your higher self. The second one is to start to cultivate trust in yourself. Even if we know the wisdom and we don't trust ourselves, we're not going to take action on it. So we need to start to cultivate our self-trust. And one way we can do this is we can reflect back on times in your life when you've listened to that internal wisdom and you've taken action even when it didn't make sense to anybody else. And today you're glad you did it. An example for me happened about like 10 years ago, and I had just finished up my master's degree, and I was in a career transition at the time, and I was struggling financially to make ends meet. And my partner and I were basically living out of our cars. And honestly, it had a lot to do with my dreams and my goals, so I was feeling a lot of pressure that it was my fault. Not only that, but we had some family that said we could stay with them, and then they changed their mind. So, one thing led to another, and they changed their mind. And that was tough for us to understand. And to make matters worse, my partner got some weird, funky skin thing from one of the houses that we were staying at. And after doing this for about 3 months, I was offered a full-time job that would easily get us out of the situation we were in. And yet, as much as it made sense on paper, and virtually all of the people in my life, I knew it wasn't the right job for me. I just knew it in my gut, and I knew it in my heart and in my soul. And I ended up having to have a really heart-to-heart, hard conversation with my partner. And together, we decided to stay the course, to hold out, to keep looking. Doesn't make sense, right? And 2 weeks later, I was interviewed for a job that at the time was my dream job. 3 weeks after that, I was being offered the position. And 6 weeks later, I started that job. And I was there for 8.5 awesome years. So what about you? Think back to a time in your life when you made a decision that didn't really make sense at the time, but it ended up being one of the best decisions that you've ever made. And if you're feeling it, share your story in the comments below. When I get to hear stories like mine from other people, it reinforces the importance of making time to listen to my internal wisdom and trusting myself. And the third thing that I do that has worked for me is surrounding myself with people who practice this idea and they encourage it in others. They walk the talk, which is so freaking inspiring to see people trusting themselves and moving forward courageously. And two, they see my greatness and they hold me in that light. And when I stumble, because I do, they see me and they love me as the imperfectly perfect human that I am, that doesn't need to be coddled, only needs to be seen and held in love until I'm ready to get up and make my next move. So how about you? Who do you already know who seems to have a deep sense of self-trust that you might be able to hang out with more often? What groups or membership programs could you join for this kind of support and this kind of demonstration? I happen to belong to a small community that is led by my own coach, and I also belong to the Optimized community, both of which, by the way, I pay to be a part of. And for me, it's totally been worth it. As we talked about in previous videos, we're the average of the 5 people we hang out with. So maybe joining a community, even if you have to pay for it, would be worth it for you. So that's it for day 64 in the Making Hope Happen series. You already know the answers. It's just a matter of making time to connect that internal wisdom, right? And demonstrating that you trust that wisdom by reflecting on past experiences where you did and it worked out. And then get into action. Start to build and reinforce and foster self-trust with that wisdom by taking action. And one way you can do that is surround yourself with people who are walking the talk and encouraging you to do the same. If you got value today, give me a thumbs up. If you know someone who would benefit from this message, please share it with them. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button now, along with the notifications, the little bell there, so you get notified when a video comes out. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for sharing. I hope you have an awesome night. Don't forget, trust you. You already have the answer. I'll see you tomorrow.